They searched everywhere until they opened the water tank. What they found changed everything. The rooftop was quiet, cold. Just before sunrise, a maintenance worker made his way across the gravel surface of the Cecil Hotel, heading toward the water tanks. Guests had been complaining for days. Low water pressure, strange smells, discolored tap water. When he opened the lid of the farthest tank, what he saw would bring the entire investigation to a horrifying end. Floating inside was the body of Elisa Lam. She had been missing for 19 days. The LAPD was called immediately. Her remains were removed with great difficulty. The tanks had to be drained and cut open. Her clothing was recovered from inside. Her hoodie, her t-shirt, her underwear, all separate, soaked, tangled. But there were no signs of physical trauma, no wounds, no cuts or bruises that would suggest a struggle, no alcohol, no recreational drugs, just her prescribed medications, and even those not in the levels you'd expect. The coroner's report ruled her death an accidental drowning, but that answer only raised more questions than it answered. How did she get onto the roof? The Cecil was supposed to be secure. The access door to the roof was locked and alarmed. Staff claimed that if it had been opened, an alert would have gone off at the front desk. Yet nobody heard anything. No one saw her go up there. The fire escape was accessible from certain windows, but climbing it would have been dangerous, especially at night, especially alone, and especially for someone in a distressed state of mind. Then there were the water tanks themselves. They were large, cylindrical, heavy, and sealed with metal lids. Getting into one wasn't easy. The lids were difficult to lift and even harder to move back into place. Once inside, getting out would have been nearly impossible without help. The interior was dark, slippery, steep. No ladder inside, no grip, just cold water and smooth metal walls. So how could she have gotten in, and why? That's what sent the internet into overdrive. Thousands of theories emerged, some logical, some paranormal, and some downright bizarre. Some believed she was murdered, that someone had followed her into the elevator, chased her to the roof, and killed her. But if that were true, how were there no marks on her body? How did the killer avoid every camera, every alarm, every witness? Others believed it was a cover-up by the hotel itself, that maybe a staff member was involved, someone who knew how to bypass the alarms and access the tanks without being noticed. Maybe they tampered with the elevator footage. Maybe that's why the timestamps are inconsistent. Maybe that's why the video feels so off. The timing, the pauses, the strange behavior, none of it added up. And then there were the supernatural theories. People pointed out the eerie parallels between Elisa's death and the movie Dark Water. In that film, a little girl dies in a rooftop water tank, and the hotel guests drink contaminated water. There's even a scene with a creepy elevator. The resemblance was unsettling, almost too close to be a coincidence. Some claimed the Cecil Hotel was cursed, that its long, violent history had built up dark energy, that Elisa was just the latest victim in a string of tragedies stretching back nearly 100 years. Suicides, murders, infamous serial killers staying in its rooms. The place had a reputation, a dark legacy that seemed to keep growing. There was also talk of the elevator game, a supposed ritual originating from Korea, where you press elevator buttons in a specific sequence to access another dimension. People noticed that Elisa had pushed buttons in a strange pattern, almost like she was playing. In the final part of the ritual, The elevator doors are supposed to open into another world. Could that explain her erratic behavior? But those were just theories. The truth might be simpler and much sadder. Elisa Lam was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and depression. She blogged openly about her mental health, her struggles, and her emotions. Some days, she was fine, writing, traveling, posting selfies, laughing at silly things. Other days, she felt lost, overwhelmed, and unsure of who she was or where she belonged. According to the coroner, Elisa had stopped taking some of her medications in the days before she disappeared. That could have led to a manic episode, or worse, a psychotic break. Psychosis isn't always violent or dramatic. Sometimes it's subtle. Disorganized thoughts, paranoia, hallucinations, a warped sense of reality. What if that's what we saw in the elevator video? Not a girl being chased, not a ghost encounter, but a young woman in crisis, fighting her own mind. Maybe she panicked, thought someone was after her. Maybe she thought hiding in the water tank was the only way to be safe. It's possible she climbed the fire escape in a frantic, confused state, opened the lid with surprising strength, and slipped inside. Once in, there was no way out, and no one knew she was up there until it was far too late. But even that explanation leaves a heavy feeling, because if that's true, then this wasn't just a tragedy. It was a failure of a system that doesn't catch people before they fall through the cracks. A failure of mental health support in society. A failure of awareness. Elisa Lam didn't need internet fame. She needed help, compassion, stability, someone to intervene before the spiral became fatal. And instead, she became a viral mystery. The elevator video was viewed millions of times. It turned her into a meme, a theory, a ghost story. People reenacted the footage, made horror games about her, mocked her hand gestures, speculated endlessly. Her name became clickbait. The Cecil Hotel got a Netflix documentary. But for her parents, none of that mattered. They lost their daughter in the most heartbreaking way. She was more than a case, more than a mystery, more than a headline. Elisa loved art. She loved books, music, photography. She dreamed of telling stories that moved people. And now she's remembered because of the way she died, not the way she lived. That's what hurts the most. What makes this case so haunting isn't just the questions that remain. It's the way we all reacted. The way people craved answers more than empathy. The way the internet turned a girl's final moments into entertainment. A viral puzzle. A creepypasta. But maybe it's not too late to shift the narrative. Instead of asking how she died, maybe we should be asking how we failed her. How someone so young, so full of life and dreams, could end up alone on a rooftop, lost in her own mind, while the world kept turning below. Where was the safety net? Where was the help? And maybe we should pay attention to those around us who are quietly struggling. Because Elisa Lam didn't just vanish. She was overlooked, misunderstood, and forgotten until it was too late. This wasn't a ghost story. It was a real one. And sometimes the real ones are the scariest of all.